And welcome back to another episode of Life Changing Challengers. Ladies and gentlemen, I have a special guest today. Her name is Mia Hanks, and she has written a book called Bridemaid, a memoir that has actually won some awards. She won the Literary Titan Book Award. So this is something really, really special. And she is going to share her story today, and we're really excited to have her. So Mia, how you doing today?
I'm good, thank you.
Oh, and I am very happy to have you on board the show. I really appreciate that. Can you tell us a little bit about your childhood? Where did you grow up? And what was it like to be Mia as a kid?
Yeah, so I grew up in the Midwest and I'm an only child. I just had a very idyllic childhood. A lot of people don't believe me when I say that. I didn't have any trauma, don't have any traumatic stories to share. It was just very much, I kind of grew up in this bubble, so to speak. It was a wonderful childhood. The only problem was it left me kind of very naive. And when I left my small little town in the Midwest to go to college in a big city, I really felt like everybody out there was good. Everybody had good intentions. There weren't bad people. I mean, I wasn't completely naive, but narcissism was not something I was looking for, that I was on alert about. So yeah, just a real simple, idyllic childhood. And then I found myself with a narcissist. So, and just didn't know how to navigate that, because I had never experienced anything like that as a kid.
All right, so let's step back a little bit because you and me have very similar childhoods. I grew up in a small town. I was an only child.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
I went to a school that was in a small town, so I didn't get out to the big city till later. Luckily, my father grew up in Chicago. I grew up in a suburb of Chicago, and he was very instrumental in making sure that I knew the ways of the world. So there's where we kind of differ. But
Yeah.
on the rest of it, yeah, no kidding. Only child, small town. So, but tell me a little bit about maybe we can start in high school. Did you play any sports? Were you into anything? Just to kind of give us a little bit more background about you.
Yeah, I had a really great high school experience. I loved high school. I really did. I went to a small school, I think maybe 100 people in my graduating class, and I was super into music. I went on to pursue that in college. Great high school experience and good people, good friends. I hated to leave it behind, but I loved college as well. So I think I just like school in general.
I get that. And music is this thing too. I played clarinet and saxophone in the band and then went to Allstate. And yeah, it was great. And then moved over to musical theater, but
Okay.
basically kind of stayed in that same genre there. So there's another thing that you and I have.
Yeah,
Wow.
that's interesting. Yeah. I don't know.
PG, maybe we didn't have anybody to play with. So then we
Right.
made up stories in our head and then music kind of took a storyline to it.
I think so, yeah. But yeah, I never was lonely as a kid. Some people will ask, isn't that lonely to not have siblings? For me, I can't say that I ever was. I was never bored. So I don't know. It's an interesting experience, I guess. Most people don't understand that because most people have siblings.
Yeah, no, I get it. And you know what? I can't remember. I mean, there was occasion, but I had a pretty solid set of friends too later, even in the beginning, my parents were very big on making sure that I knew the neighborhood kids, but on the whole, I was alone a lot, but I wasn't lonely.
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, I think I still like my alone time even to this day. And I think that's rooted in being an only child and not, I don't like a lot of chaos because I wasn't brought up that way. These large families that I knew, there was always a lot of activity and chaos in their house. And it was fun to go over there and play. But then I wanted to go home to my peace and quiet, right?
Yeah. That's exactly right. It was like I had friends that I had 3 and 4 siblings in the
Yeah.
house and I knew them all. Families would be like coming over for dinner and blah, blah, blah. You're like, I'd like to go home now.
Just it gets a little too overstimulating, because you're just not used to that constant activity. But it was fun to go play with those
Yeah.
friends. But yeah, I always wanted to come back home.
Yeah. There was plenty of sleepovers, but most of the time it was a friend that had siblings that would want to sleep over at my house.
Yes.
So, I think 'cause they like the peace and quiet ones.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. So you went to a large college, it sounds like, a large university.
Yeah, medium size in Nashville, Tennessee. So, not a huge city, but much bigger than where I was from. So it felt like I was going to the big city.
And did you find yourself adapting pretty well, or did you
I did.
feel
Yeah. I think I surprised myself. I wasn't sure that I was cut out for that, leaving home and going, I don't know, 10 hours away or something. But yeah, I adapted really well, made friends quickly, had a great college experience. So I loved it.
did you find a job right away?
So I actually got married after my junior year of college and
Okay.
then finished my senior year. And then as soon as I graduated, my husband had already started a job. And so I moved straight away with him to another city where his job was. So yeah, I didn't have any experience. I lived in the dorms all 4 years. So I technically lived on my own, I guess you can say, in the dorm. But then I went straight from a dorm to a house with my husband. So there wasn't that in between, getting a job and living on my own kind of thing.
Okay. This is getting kind of scary, right?
Okay.
I got married out of high school. I got married my junior year too,
Oh my goodness.
right after sophomore year.
Yep.
And so I know I didn't go what you went through. Yeah, isn't that's that crazy? I actually left school for a year, make my way in the world, and then came back and finished up.
Okay.
So yeah, but I was married.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Young. So I was 21 when I got married.
oh,
So
awesome
that was young. Yeah.
time. Yeah, it was about 20 something. Wow, talk about coincidence. Okay, so you moved away to a place where your husband at the time was working. What did he do?
He was an engineer.
Okay, like civil.
Oh, civil. No, in like the oil business.
Okay, great. All right. So oil and engineering, was he away a lot?
He really wasn't. No, occasional business trips, but no, he was mostly home.
All right. So you were college sweethearts, it sounds like. And
Sure. Yeah.
were you working as well?
I worked a little bit, like, the first 2 years we were married, I was teaching, private teaching. So not a full-time job. And yeah, I never did work a full-time job the whole time I was married. And, I think looking back, I'm not sure that he would really have wanted me to work, honestly. So I never did. Yeah. I was just part-time for a couple years here and there.
All right. Well, you were teaching music.
I was.
At least you got to do something that you loved.
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
But you weren't performing.
I was not performing. And no, I didn't want to perform.
So all in all, when you first got to a new home, would you say that you're pretty content?
There were a few red flags early on that I tended to sweep under the rug because I thought, we're newly married. This will get better. I just need to give it time. So I thought I was pretty happy, but in retrospect, something was off from the very beginning.
Okay. Can you just elaborate on the red flags? That obviously these are hindsight. But what were some of those red flags that you swept underneath the rug?
Definitely the biggest one was this lack of empathy that I saw from him very early, not being able to put himself in someone else's shoes, and having very little compassion. For example, if I was sick, his response would not be to say, oh, how can I help you? I'm sorry you're feeling bad, whatever. His response would be to be angry because that disrupted his day. That was not in his agenda. It was an inconvenience to him. And so I learned really early that anything that inconvenienced him made him very angry. And again, I just thought, well, it's just a personality quirk, whatever, and try to just look past those things. The problem is those things that you see early, those red flags, so to speak, those become bigger issues later on. And that's what I didn't know. I was just too naive to realize that these things were not going to go away. But if I just hang in there, if I just hang in there and just try to be the best wife I can. This will all fix itself. And that was not the way to approach it.
It's so interesting. I have to tell you, so like I mentioned before, I've got a few episodes of people in your situation. And you know what? That is a common denominator.
Yeah,
It is very interesting that is the lack of empathy. And
very
you are
much.
not the first person to sit there and give the sick example
Yeah. Mhm.
of you sick and your husband or your ex, them getting angry. That's not the
Yeah.
first example. You're not the first person to say that. That is unbelievable. So yeah.
It's typical of narcissists. Everything's about them. So anything that is inconvenient or doesn't flow with their plans or how they think the day should go, a narcissist can be the nicest, most charming person in the world as long as everything's going their way. But as soon as something disrupts, it's like Jekyll and Hyde. So I definitely saw that very early.
Wow. So did you have like date nights? Did you have friends that were couples? Were you active in the church or anything like that?
We had a few friends, not a lot. We never really had a lot of friends. Early in the marriage, we had a couple of other couples that we would go out to dinner with, out to movies. We were active in church. Not a lot of church friends, but we definitely had a few friends, but not just a huge social circle, no.
What was he like while you were in public?
So in public, so he is, if he were to be diagnosed, he would be diagnosed as a covert narcissist. These people in public, they are just the life of the party. They're wonderful. They're kind. They're compassionate. They're generous. Everybody thinks they are, he is husband of the year, father of the year. And it's all a lie. It's all a lie. But the problem is being young and naive like I was, I sort of helped him, and I didn't realize I was doing this at the time, but I sort of helped him wear that mask. Yeah, he's so great, and I'm telling everybody else, yeah, he's a great husband. Everything's great. Everything's perfect. And I was sort of helping that false image along, and I look back now and realize, yeah, I was kind of living that lie with him. And I guess to me, it seemed like what I needed to do, protect his image, make him look good. And I did my job pretty well. I think everybody bought the lie he was living.
Not a different story. So I guess I can start to see how doctors and psychologists are able to put things in the PDR because it's just very interesting that this story has become so similar.
They do. The narcissists really, if you talk to very many people who have been in relationships with narcissists, you'll find that these people, it seems like they're all playing from the same playbook. It's like they all have this unwritten set of rules of how they act. It's amazing how narcissists are so alike and their traits are so similar.
Hmm. Did you have children?
Yes, we have 2 children.
How long after you got married did you have your children?
I think that my oldest was born about 7 years into my marriage, something like that, 6 years, 7 years. And then 4 years later, my second one. So we have 2 kids.
Wow. Okay. Was it for lack of trying or was it planned that it would?
Yeah, there were fertility issues. And so that's why it was 7 years for the first one. I wanted kids earlier. And looking back, I thought that maybe in addition to me just wanting kids, I also thought it might change him a little bit. It might make him a better husband. At the time, it seemed a little reasonable that I might see a better side of him once we had kids.
No, that makes all the sense in the world because you hear it all the time. People, fathers every day sit there and say, my God, the minute I held my little boy, my little girl in their hands, it changed me forever.
Yeah.
I wanted to live for this baby. So no, I do not think that was a bad idea. And I do not think that you were being naive by thinking that way at all, because I know it changes people.
But I think that was in the back of my mind that maybe these behaviors that I didn't like, that I saw in him, maybe those would fall by the wayside once we had kids.
Right. Because you would think that, okay, now he's going to hold this little bundle of joy and that is going to be his fixation. The fixation is now going to be on his
Right.
child.
Yes.
Nothing more than to make sure that that child is protected, that they're cared for, and that they're supported, but not a narcissist.
No, it really doesn't. And it's so interesting. I thought it would make him more compassionate, more empathetic. That doesn't happen. Unfortunately, they don't possess empathy. And it's really wild to learn that narcissists oftentimes are jealous of their own children. It really can create a difficult dynamic.
I'd never heard that they're actually.
Yeah. My ex-husband was very possessive of my time. He wanted 100% of my attention 100% of the time. And when kids come along, that's just not, my kids came first. And, my kids came first when it came to my attention. And that just did not fly well with him at all.
So you had your first child 7 years into your marriage.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, that's crazy. And then what you said, it was 4 more years before you had your second?
Yeah, that's right.
So what made you decide that you wanted the second one? Or was it an ups?
It was kind of, we both kind of wanted 2 kids. I didn't, as much as I loved being an only child, and I still do, I really didn't want my oldest to be an only child. I just thought, because thinking about when you're an only child, my kids then don't really have many cousins, because they don't really have any aunts and uncles. It just felt like there weren't enough family members, and I really wanted her to have a sibling. So, yeah.
All right. That's definitely hypocritical of your ex. He was so infatuated to make sure that he wanted all your time. And all of a sudden he's not, I'm going to assume that he wasn't behaving very well because.
Narcissists get worse with age. So every year was a little bit worse. And, toward the last 4 or 5 years of our marriage, it was awful. But, we still had good times in those earlier years, I would say. I mean, we made good memories. It's just that it wasn't all good.
All right. So there is some happiness in there, just.
For sure.
And it would have to be.
Otherwise you can't stay, right? For 3 decades. There's definitely good stuff. And that did make it hard when I left, because you're thinking, well, every day wasn't bad, and I really had to deal with that and say, is it okay that I left? Because there were some good times, but it doesn't cancel out the bad.
So how was he with the children? Because I'm sure that, you had to give him time with his kids by himself, whether you were sleeping, sick.
Yeah.
How was he with your children?
He was good as long as it was fun for him. He only wanted to participate in the fun part. He did not want to be inconvenienced or deal with the day-to-day. And so really, for the most part, I felt like a single parent, and he just got to come along and play when it was good. But if anything went sideways, I was the one that was blamed for anything that didn't work out the way he thought it should. He sort of wanted to have this Norman Rockwell type image, and he kind of looked to me to provide that. And so he wanted everything to flow perfectly. And when it didn't, it was my fault. So yeah, as long as everything was fun and games, he was a fun dad when it was fun and games. But when it wasn't, he wasn't interested.
Interesting. So can you count all the dirty diapers that he changed?
Oh, yeah. For sure. Yeah. On one hand.
Wow. And I'm getting to this. There's a method to my madness here. So let's go forward to a point where the children could feed themselves. Let's say that. But 8 and 5 or 9 and 5 and 10 and 4, 10 and 6, something like that. Did you have regular dinners? Was dinners sit down at a table?
They were for a while, and then life gets crazy and it became less frequent to do a sit down dinner. Everyone was eating on their own schedule, especially as the kids were getting older. It started out that way. It's always the idea that you want to have family dinners and all of this. Unfortunately, reality doesn't always come out the way that you think.
Yeah, and the reason why I was getting to it was I was going to ask what was behavior like. So, I mean, if you've got a couple of kids that are kids,
Yeah,
I mean, yeah, they can hold a fork, they can hold a spoon, they can put it in their mouth, and they can do it without making a mess. But sometimes they don't. Right?
right.
That was my question: was the behavior at the table when things could be good, maybe they weren't, strictly because kids are kids.
Yeah, I mean, he would be very upset with me if, say, the kids were fighting. My kids fought like cats and dogs. So it was difficult. He, for whatever reason, in his perfect world that he thought he lived in, the kids didn't fight. Everything was great and everybody got along. That's not reality. And so, yeah, I mean, he was mad at me most of the time because the kids were fighting or the kids were doing this or that, or they were interrupting him and he was trying to work and why aren't you making them be quiet? So it was challenging. Those were some difficult years. I would say those elementary school years, I had a lot on my plate trying to keep the kids somewhat under control so that he wouldn't be mad at me. And it was a lot going on.
So basically, he wanted Gilead.
Yeah. And of course, you move into the teenage years and it gets even more complex. So, yeah, it was challenging for sure.
I was just trying to spike the moment there, and I thought you got that reference. That's all.
I didn't know.
Oh, okay. So there's a series called Handmaid's Tale.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So that the environment,
Yes.
this everything's called Gilead, and it was really like that.
And that's what he wanted.
Yeah. Kids were seen and not heard,
Yes.
but everything was Norman Rockwell, white.
That's what yeah.
Yeah.
It's not reality. For me, I put a lot of pressure on me because then I start to internalize, narcissists use these tactics, gaslighting, you've heard of that term. They do a lot of that and this kind of coercive control. And they really make you feel like you are responsible for anything that doesn't go right. I was buying what he was selling, and he was saying it's all your fault and all of this. If I had been clear-headed at the time, I would have said, well, no, it's not all my fault. But he had me in such a fog. There's a term called trauma bonding, which really is the same thing as Stockholm syndrome. And you really do find yourself defending this person. And that's what I was doing. I believed everything he said, which right now that I'm talking about it sounds crazy, but I really did. I believed that I was the problem. I believed everything was my fault. And so that's kind of how you keep going. You just say, well, it's all me. And if I just do better, things will be better.
What were some of the tactics that you took in order to keep the peace?
Definitely the main tactic I did was I caved to anything I needed to do to keep the peace. For me, again, going back to that, growing up as an only child and, grew up in a peaceful environment, I don't do well with conflict. I don't do well with confrontation. And so whatever I had to do to keep things peaceful and running smooth, I just did, rather than stand up and say, no, this isn't right, or I don't like the way you're treating me, or I don't like what you say to me. I would just smooth it over, sweep it under the rug. It's all going to be okay tomorrow, just to keep that peace.
Interesting. So, okay. Last question before we start going in, we start making turn the corner a little bit. So, in order to keep his narcissism at bay, going 2020, what would a typical day look like where things would be super smooth?
Basically, anything that, however he wants the day to go, I have to agree with it and be happy about it. Doesn't want anyone to give him any options. Don't give me alternatives. Don't give me options. This is what I want to do. This is what we're going to do. And if you just go along with it and you're happy with it and he gets his way all day long, then he's happy. It's all good. If he wants to go out to eat at this particular restaurant and he wants to see this particular movie and whatever, he wants to have this for lunch, that's great. Absolutely. And you agree with him, you build him up all day long, you compliment him and make him feel like he's the greatest guy in the world. And he'll be super nice on that day. But that was not every day. With the narcissist, the problem with them is you hear the term moving the goalposts. they move the goalposts. There's nothing you can do for these people that is enough. You could give them the moon, the sun, the stars, and they would come up with something that you didn't provide. So you think you're doing everything they want you to do, and they're still not happy. Well, but you did, he could always find fault, but you didn't do this. If you complimented him 10 times a day, he would be upset that you didn't compliment him 11 times. So you just can't win with these people.
So when and what sparked the initial, I need to get out of here. I need to start setting a strategy to start moving in a direction that's safer for you. Because it sounds like to me, you stayed a lot for the kids. Because
I did.
It sounds like they were grown and done before you finally
They
left.
were. Yeah, they were. And that was a consideration for sure. I wouldn't let myself go there in my mind earlier in the marriage because there was no way I was going to share custody of my kids. I mean, to me, that seemed like the worst thing in the world. You know, hindsight is 2020. And I realized that I did my kids a disservice by staying. But at the time, I thought I was making the right decision. So what finally prompted me to say, I've got to get out of here, it was really the decline of my physical health. I was suffering from chronic pain, headaches, stomach aches. I was sick every day. I was having panic attacks almost daily, sometimes more than once a day. And I was falling apart. I mean, I reached a point where I thought to myself, this is not sustainable. I physically cannot live like this. And it was just that stress that I was living under. It's a constant state of fight or flight, 24/7. And our bodies are not meant for that level of stress for that long. So it really just became, in order to save my physical health, I had to get out. And when I did leave, I would say within 2 weeks, maybe less, I felt like a new person. I had been so sleep deprived for so long. That was a huge factor too. Just being in that fog of sleep deprivation. When I left and I was able to get the rest I needed and start taking care of myself, it was almost an immediate turnaround in my health and how I felt.
Wow. So you recognized that your health was declining? Was that the switch?
It really was. It was that and the fact that, as I said, narcissism gets worse with age. And he had just reached a point, it seemed like when he turned 50, something just got orders of magnitude worse. And I don't know if he was having some kind of midlife crisis, but he got so controlling that it almost became frightening. And while nothing ever got physical, I really had a strong sense that it could. He was just having like childlike tantrums. And it just reached a point where I thought, this is not safe. And, I feel like I'm dying. So it was kind of just the culmination of everything sort of just fell apart all at once. And I kind of had an opportunity to get out. And thankfully, I took it.
So can you tell us a little bit about that story, about, maybe how you planned it, and then finally how you finally decided that, all right, this is the day, the time, and I'm leaving.
Yeah, we had decided because our kids were grown and our youngest was graduating high school, we had decided to downsize our house. We sold our house. We had our house on the market. And we were going to just go to interim living and take our time looking for kind of our retirement home, I guess you could say. It was in that transition of selling the house that I realized I've got an opportunity here. I can get out. There was something about selling that house that, it was sort of, we're coming to this crossroads and this life change, and the kids are out of school. And it just felt like, I think I could make this work. But I was terrified to leave. I didn't know what he would do. So what I did was I more or less just told him I needed a break. I was, the whole sale of the house and all of that was very stressful, the move. And so I went and stayed with my parents. And I told him, I just need a mental break. I'm just going to do this for a while and see what happens. And that's what I did. And I secretly knew when I left that I was not going to come back. And I didn't.
So were you able to get any proceeds from the sale of the house? Were you able to start your new life off with, or did you start from scratch?
Well, fortunately, my parents were able to help me because as soon as he realized that I was not coming back, He drained the bank account. He tried to make living extremely difficult for me. His hope was if he just chokes me out enough, I'll come back. But I didn't because I did have the financial support of my parents. It took me a year to file for divorce. In retrospect, that was not a good decision because it gave him a lot of time to plan. But it took me that long to get to a point where I could get the courage up enough to serve him with those divorce papers. And that was just terrifying to me. So it did take a year. And then the divorce took almost a year. So it was a very lengthy process.
How did you tell your kids that you weren't coming back?
I think they all found out about the same time. My kids really weren't surprised. I thought that it would be shocking to them. They were actually both reasonably happy that I had done this. In fact, maybe a year later, my oldest told me, I wish you would have done this years ago. I definitely had the support of my kids, and they both have a relationship with their dad. He's their father. But I felt like they've really been supportive of my decision to divorce. They've been happy with the outcome.
Oh, good. I'm happy that you got away. By listening to the story, I feel like I have a connection with you now. That's great. So I'm happy that you got out. What's life like now for you?
It's very different than what I lived for so long. There's so much freedom. I was never used to this level of freedom and waking up every morning and saying, how do I want to spend my day? What do I want to do? Who do I want to talk to? What do I want to eat? Making all those decisions, it's a little overwhelming because I've never had so much freedom. But at the same time, it's really exciting. And yeah, I'm enjoying getting to go on podcasts and talk about, some people say, why do you want to keep rehashing that? And I say, well, because it's amazing how many people out there are in these situations and they don't realize it, or they think they're the only one. I didn't think there was anyone else when I was going through this. I did not believe there was anyone else that was going through what I was going through. And had I heard a podcast or, read a book that opened my eyes, I would have been in tune to this a lot earlier than I was. And I would have left a lot sooner.
Well, for the audience and myself, I'm going to thank you for having the courage and for going through it over and over again for people to show them what this is like, just the idea. And, obviously hindsight's 2020. So when you're starting to see that very first red flag that you had, that you realized that, hey, the guy's got no empathy.
Yeah.
If you're sick and your new husband or new wife is like, oh, here's a Kleenex and here's a bottle of 7-Up. I'll see you after I get off the golf course. That is a red flag. This person that supposedly loves you. Are there any other red flags that you can give to our audience that might help them realize that this is something that they should be really thinking about?
Yeah, just that level of control. Narcissists have to control the narrative. They have to control their people around them. They have to control everything. But it's hard sometimes to know that you're being controlled. One thing that they'll do, they tend to like to isolate you. They don't love it when you spend a lot of time with your family. They don't really love you having a lot of friends. And the reason for that is they don't want other people to look at the situation and say, he may not be all that great. So they see it as a threat if you have a bunch of friends that you're hanging out with. Oftentimes, narcissists control all the finances. Little things like that you don't realize. I thought I had my little debit card with access to our day-to-day checking account, and I thought I had it made. I didn't realize he was being financially abusive. When I left, I realized, wait a minute, I can't even access money to hire a lawyer. All I had was access to that checking account. Well, that was by design. He did that by design. All his other accounts, I had no access to. And again, it was all planned. And so here I thought I just had it made and my life was great with my debit card until I decide I want to leave. I want to get my own place. I need to hire a divorce attorney. And there are no funds for that because he's got all of that tied up. So, you can be being controlled and not realize it. And you just have to look for those little things. And is this person really jealous of my time, of my attention? Because it can be a scary thing and it builds. It can get worse with time. So that's definitely what I saw.
I would take that as if you ask your new spouse and you tell him that you are going on a girls' trip and he gets angry,
Yeah.
that's a red flag, right?
It's a red flag, definitely. I mean, if you feel like you are being isolated, there's a reason you're being isolated, and it's not a good reason.
Exactly. So, well, Mia, I can't tell you how much respect I have for you to be able to do this and to bring these issues to the forefront. And again, just like your friends were saying, because I would feel the same way. You reliving this and rehashing this, but you're rehashing it for people so they understand that this is a real thing and they could possibly be in one of these relationships. So thank you for that. I really appreciate it. Now, for the rest of you that are listening, again, if you go to miajhanks.com, you'll be able to get to her blog and see some of her media. And there's also her book called Bridemaid, a Memoir, Mia J. Hanks. And there's a buy now button, and that's going directly to Amazon. In the show notes, I will provide you with this link, and I will also provide you with a direct link right to the book. But definitely check out her website. She's got some other podcasts that she's been on. This is gorgeous. It's blue and it's got whites in it and it's in silver and it's beautiful. Yeah, definitely check that out too. But yeah, definitely. That's miajhanks.com, and you can check out her book, Bridemaid. If you are watching this on YouTube, which is probably going to be one of the more boring ones because Mia is decided, for security reasons that she's not going to be on camera, which is fine. I have no problem with that. Most of the audience is audio. But if you are watching, go ahead and hit that subscribe and the like button and the notification bell so you always know when we're dropping a new episode. If you're listening on Amazon, I guess you could be listening on Amazon. You could also be listening on Apple and on Spotify. Go ahead and leave us a review. And I don't even care if it's a good review because I'll take any feedback in order to evolve this podcast to make it better and better so that you are getting the information that you would like. But for now, I would just like to say, Mia, thank you again. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
So for Mia and myself and for Magnus, he's back here. Thank you so much for listening, and we will see you in the next one.